I have a problem, and it's a problem every knitter dreads. I have the moth. And do you know what? I'm gutted because I'm normally so vigilant. I store all my yarn in plastic boxes. However, I think like a lot of us over the pandemic, I indulged in quite a lot of retail therapy, sort of with the justification that, oh, I want these beautiful independent yarn stores to survive and they need my money. And as a result, my yarn stash grew at a much faster rate than I could knit it up. I've also been very ill, too ill to knit even, so I'm sort of not going through it at the rate that I would have. And so I ran out of storage space probably about 2 years ago, and I've just been shoving it anywhere, sort of out of sight, out of mind. And then of course I discovered those little fuckers nibbling away at my carpet, my clothes, my yarn stash. So over the past few weeks, I've been freezing all my yarn, I've brushed and washed and aired all my vintage clothes. I've been following instructions. Actually, where is it? I've dug out my copy of Make, Do and Mend, which has, the first section is entirely on just preventing moths, basically. And they call it the Moth Menace. So I've been doing everything I can, but of course this has meant I've been confronted with the reality that is my yarn stash. And I'm not generally a person that likes a massive stash, so I really need to tackle this now mammoth, well, by my standards, mammoth stash of yarn. So what I'm going to do today, everything has been frozen, everything's been treated for moths, so there shouldn't be any actual larvae left in there. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to get out all my yarn, sort through it, organise it, and then come up with a plan to use it all. I mean every last scrap. We're going make, do and mend here, team. After having spent so much time and energy, which I just don't have, dealing with these bloody critters, I'm not doing this again. So I don't want to be in a position where my yarn stash is this out of control. I need to come up with a plan to get this right down. I'm going to bring you along for the ride. You can see everything I've got. I'm going to lay it all out on the bed. And then I think with the help of Ravelry, I'm going to add it all to my Ravelry stash and then come up with a plan for ways to use it up. So this is going to be quite a job. Are you ready? Let's go. So it's a lot more than I'd maybe even realised when I see it all out on the bed like this. I'm already tired. So from now on in, we'll kind of be sitting down to do this. I kind of don't know where to start. What I think I might do is organise it by weight category and see what I have the most of, and then that will probably inform which box I put it in, because I've got 2 bigger boxes and 2 smaller boxes. Let's hope it all fits. Yeah, and then what I might do is, like, I see some yarns here that I already have projects in mind. So what I might do is bag those up to be in the project bag or something ready to go, so I don't forget what I want. I'm also going to add those things to my Ravelry queue so that I know, for example, I have a project in mind for this yarn, I know what it is, and then I could double check I've got the right needles, all that sort of thing. And so then I'll probably eliminate those that I definitely have a plan for, and then I'm going to look at what I've got left, how much, because I've got lots of like partial skeins of things, so I'm going to weigh them, put them into Ravelry so I know exactly how much yardage I've got, and then come up with a plan for those awkward bits that I don't know what to do with, or if I've got one ball of something left or one skein of something left, what can I make with just one skein of that? A lot of this is like, here's a half-used West Yorkshire Spinner's signature sock. Do you know what I mean? A lot of it is things like this that I just have not thought about since I finished that project. So it's going to remind me what I have, and then I can make a plan from there. Oh boy. Okay. I've also, obviously, just keep finding random needles that have obviously been in with this. They've been through the freezer, so they're free of moths too. Let's make a start on this. It's gonna be tough. I'm gonna be here for a while. So in here I have all my hexie puffs for my hexie puff quilt that I'm working on, and I'm basically just using the scraps to make them. So this is, I kind of appreciate that this is a blanket that's going to take me years to make, years and years and years, because I'm only using scraps of hand-dyed yarns. I don't own that many hand-dyed yarns. I don't buy them very often, so this needs a better long-term storage plan than an old Sainsbury's plastic bag. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to keep all the hexie puffs themselves and any yarns I find that I think, oh, I can use that up in my hexie puff quilt together. Okay, I think we have a little bit more logic here. It's so much, it's so much. I might have to count up how many sort of skeins I have. I might have to do a bit of rounding, or like balls, 50-gram balls maybe. It's gonna be easier. Oh my God. But I think I have the most 4-ply, so maybe let's start there. Okay, so I have now weighed, photographed and uploaded to Ravelry all of my Shetland, I'm calling them, yarns. I've got quite a few left over from when I made my Yell cardigan. I also was given quite a few odd balls of wool that I've put in this category. I don't really know where they came from, so I have no... This took forever, basically, because this was tough. But anyway, it's done now. This almost fills a box, and I don't know what else I can put in here that I've got room for. Maybe the 2-ply. So I think that's what I'm going to do next, is the same thing all again with the 2-ply yarns. Okay, so now all the 2-ply is in with all the Shetland stuff. So I have 2 boxes left. I've got, and everything that's left now is either cotton yarns, double knit, heavier than double knit. I never know the right name. Bulky, chunky, super bulky, Aran, worsted. I don't know what I'm on about there. So anything heavier than double knit. And then I've got a whole load of vintage yarn as well. I don't know if I'm ever going to use, maybe I might. So I think I'm going to put all of that in one box by itself. I've got a big box and a small box this size left. So I think the vintage yarn can go in the small box and everything else can go in the big box. This has been a very intense process and I'm not even halfway through and I haven't even started deciding on what I'm going to make with it yet, which is the exciting part. So guess I just have to crack on for now. I didn't even count. So we were at 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 73, 84, 85, 86, 86 and a half. That took so long and my back really hurts now, but it's done. As you can see here, it's all boxed up behind me. So I have 4 boxes. It's now sorted by weight, which I think is probably the best way to organise yarn. So I have also pulled out all my UFOs, or they're not so much UFOs as, what's the other acronym? WIPs, works in progress. Because I've all sort of been working on them recently, you know, they haven't been sat in a cupboard for years. So I've pulled out all of those, and then I've also pulled out all the yarn that I already know I have a plan for. But that still leaves a lot of stuff. As I went along, I kind of tallied it up, and I think I have 154 50-gram balls of wool, or equivalent to that. So that's a lot. I think my individual entries on Ravelry was more like 92, but you know, if I've got 5 balls or skeins or whatever of one yarn, they went in together, you know. 154 balls of wool is just madness, really. but never mind. Part of the reason why I wanted to do this, like I say, was because I want to start eliminating as much of my stash as possible. I don't know how long that's going to take. I also don't really think that buying bans really work because, well, we all of us need that dopamine hit every once in a while of, ooh, new stuff. So it's not like I'm never going to buy new wool ever again, but I am going to be a bit more mindful about what I buy. Do I really need more 4-ply? No, I have a whole box full of it. Doing things like this makes me realise what I like to knit and what I like to wear. I've spoken about this before. I like to wear lightweight drapey knits. I don't really like to wear big chunky cardigans. And yet I have a whole box full of double knit weight and up yarn. And I'm never going to wear anything I make out of it. A lot of it is partial skeins, leftovers. So like we've got some make, do, amend stuff in the works, use up some bits of yarn. I think that's going to be some really fun projects, and I hope you'll enjoy that sort of thing. Shall I talk you through my plans? So as you can see, the top box over here is vintage yarn, and then it's Shetland and 2-ply yarns. This top box is 4-ply and the bottom box is double knit. Oh, double knit and above. So as you can see, I definitely have the most 4-ply. Then in the middle here, we have all my works in progress. I didn't include yarns for works in progress in the stash, if that makes sense. Once I'm finished with them, I will then stash the yarn. So this is my Hexie Puff quilt. I've kept it, the loose Hexies in a plastic bag, but the yarns and things, all the yarns that I'm planning to use up for the Hexie quilt are now in this William Morris knitting bag. Perfect. This is a crochet blanket I've been working on freestyle using a whole load of this paint box Cotton Aran, which I bought years ago for something else and has been sitting under my bed for maybe like 4 years now. And so I'm freestyling a ripple striped blanket bedspread. I might have made it too big so that now I'm not going to be able to complete the blanket with the yarns I've actually got. So I'm just going to have to go with it and see. So I'm keeping all those in a shoebox. As you can see, it was previously knitted up into something and then frogged, which is part of the reason why I've not been knowing what to do with it all these years. So I'm just going to, particularly like knitting with cotton, I don't find very pleasant. And then I was like, hey, why don't I crochet something? I can crochet. So crochet blanket. This is a Victorian knitting project, which you will see more about by and by, I am sure. Then at the back, I'm working on, it's half finished actually, I've done the front. This is a lace 1940s underwear project I'm working on, and that at the back there is a crochet bra. Yep, you heard that right. There'll be a video on that one, so you'll see a bit more about it. So then actually, why don't I get the patterns to show you? I thought I'd sit down again to save energy and prevent the camera shake. So all these yarns here are my upcoming knitting projects I want to work on. The first one I should talk about is this one, because I don't have a physical pattern for this. I have a digital pattern, which it looks like this, and it came from Subversive Femme. So some of these you might recognize from my 3-ply yarns videos. I don't think I actually swatched the West Yorkshire spinners, but these two I did swatches for my Finding Vintage 3-ply weight yarns video. And I have lots of these, like 45 grams basically of every single one of those yarns left from that video that I don't really know what to do with. So I've been looking for patterns to use up all these odds and ends of yarn. And then I also remembered I've been working on this home fires project to make lots of the cardigans and jumpers and things in home fires, and I was like, oh, I wonder if I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And that's when I came across and remembered this Subversive Femme pattern. For the yarn quantities for that, you need 1 ounce of 3 colours, and then you need main body colour. So then this is Cascades, I think, because it was cheap. Fingering 220. So those are all yarns that were mentioned or talked about or swatched in that video. And so I've gone for this sort of red, orange, browny colour scheme for that, which I'm quite excited about. So that's one that's not going to be a screen accurate recreation of a home fires cardigan. That's my own interpretation using what I've got. So that's pretty standard retro Claude knitting fare. But the next one is something very different. Now, you may know I'm good friends with Micah from Engineering Knits, and she sent me all the way from the USA a whole load of original 1930s knitting magazines. Most of them are Minerva. This one is Fleischer's, and there's so many things in all of them. Maybe one day I'll like walk you through all of them, but there's so many things, beautiful things in there that I want to make. But the one that really caught my eye because it was so unusual is this one, and it's called a Thrift T slip-on, number 1993. Oh. I don't know if you can see that. It's such an unusual design for this era, particularly because it's in really chunky yarn. And so obviously finding substitute vintage yarns is always tricky, but when it's an unusual yarn, even more so. The original yarn is called Fleischer's Germantown Zephyr 8-fold. And they said 3 balls of that. No idea how much that is, what weight that is. What's interesting is they give the knitting needle size, standard size 16, which I'm guessing must be a US 16, because it then has the millimetre size. They're using the metric system in America in the 30s, just blows my mind. The millimetre size 12. So I'm assuming that's 12 millimetre needles, and the tension is 9 stitches is 4 inches and 3 rows is 1 inch. So this is a really, really chunky pattern for like a delicate afternoon blouse. So that's where this Drops Snow is coming in for me. The tension isn't quite right, the weight isn't quite right. The recommended needle size on this is 9 millimetre, not 12. But this was the chunkiest that I could find that was sort of appropriate for a vintage style. You know, you've got some more, I could find chunkier, but it was either out of my price range or was like variegated or heathery or, you know, not quite right. So this is why I went for this. So I'm really excited to give this a go because I don't do a lot of knitting at this weight, and it's also just so different, so unusual, and I'm really excited about it basically. So this is the thing, trying to get my stash down. What's a good thing about knitting chunky is you get rid of a lot of yarn quickly. So that would be 6 balls out of my stash gone just with that one. Oh, and of course the hopefully 6 from the Home Fires jumper. However, the next one I have plans for is a lace weight project, and that would be one skein. So 2 balls maybe. And this is a British company, Greenock, and it's for a lace blouse. You know I love these lacy blouses. And I'll be honest, I had a bit of a disaster when I was washing everything, having put it in the freezer to get rid of the moths. Somebody in my house, who shall remain nameless, put the washing machine accidentally not on the wool cycle. And so a lot of my favourite lacy vintage knits ended up this big. But to be honest, I'm not really that sad about it because I can always knit new ones. I like knitting, you know. I still have a lot of the leftover yarn that I used for most of those. So, you know, it's not the end of the world. What a shame. I'll have to do more knitting. Do you know what I mean? But I wanted to try this one because this one's a bit different, and it only calls for 3 ounces of 2-ply fingering. So this is 100 grams, which is like 3.5 ounces. 1 skein should be enough. And this is West Yorkshire Spinners Exquisite Lace in colour Lagoon. What I tend to do with my knitting is I tend to like swing between lacy projects and heavier weight projects just to give my hands a bit of a rest from the very intense, fine, delicate lace work. Maybe that's quite a good one to do after my chunky 1930s one. So then I've got 2 more I'll tell you about. Part of the reason why I'm telling you all about these is to keep me accountable, to keep me on the straight and narrow. So keep pestering me. Have you knitted that lacy jumper yet? And hopefully I'll eventually do it. So the next project I want to work on is from this book, Practical Knitting Illustrated, which is a very famous book if you're into vintage knitting or into the history of knitting. It's from this series by Margaret Murray and Jane Coster. And I have 4 now, I think, of their books. Yeah, and those lacy cami knickers I'm knitting is from one of their books as well, a slightly later one. I believe this is the first one. It's not entirely clear, but you've probably seen some of these designs floating around online, even though technically they're not public domain yet. But the one that I'm really interested in is a very straightforward, what do they call it, sports jersey? Classic jersey. Here we are. So it's literally, this book is quite fragile. Very simple 1940s jersey, stocking stitch, which normally I don't like to do stocking stitch because I get really bored. So what I thought I would do to make this a bit more interesting is try and take this vintage pattern, which is knit flat, and reverse engineer it to be knit in the round in the style of a modern knitting pattern where you do like the upper back and then the upper front and then join them together. And I mean, I quite like it. I don't mind sewing up. I think that's the thing. Because I'm a seamstress, I don't mind sewing up my knits. But I appreciate if you're not a sewist, sewing up can be really annoying. So I was trying to think if I could reinterpret the instructions to give them like a more modern construction. I'm probably going to make a video about it actually, because, you know, if it works, be quite nice to share with you how to do that. But I don't know if it's going to work or not. So, or if I'm skilled enough to do that. Oh, and the yarn, again, one from my 3-ply yarns video. It's the Danish, I am told, not Swedish. I got it wrong in the previous video. Brand Camarose. So this is an organic merino wool and cotton blend. So that's why I thought it'd be quite nice for like a lighter jersey to wear next to the skin, a short sleeve jersey, you know. And I can get it to knit up to the right tension, so I'm going to give it a go with this. I've used this a lot before. I like it, so not a controversial choice there. So then hopefully that would be 3 skeins down. Let me just check. I'm not sure I've got enough of that, you know, now I look at it. 5 ounces, 1.8, 50 grams, yeah, 1.8, 3.6, 5.4, maybe? That seems like I'm cutting it really fine there. Wow. We'll have to see, won't we? We'll have to see. I suppose the good thing is if you're knitting from the top down, you can make it as long or as short as you like if you're running out of yarn. Oh dear. Anyway, moving on. The last project that I have the yarn for, and I know what I'm doing with, is this, which you can see is actually frogged from a previous project. So I bought this at the beginning of like my vintage knitting journey, getting back into knitting. It's Wendy's Supreme Luxury Cotton Silk Double Knit, which I think I got, it was inexpensive, that's why I bought it. And at the time I just used it to knit a free pattern that I found on Ravelry. I have some pictures here. And I liked knitting it up. I love the finished product. I love the way it looked, apart from the colour. I just didn't like this minty green colour on me. So several years ago now, I bought some Dylon dye, because it's cotton and silk. Dylon should work just fine. So I bought dye to dye it and try my hand at yarn dyeing, which I have done, I think, once before for a textiles project, but not since. So 10 years ago. And yeah, I bought it and thought, oh, that'd be really fun and I'll make a video about it and it'll be really cool. Have I got round to it? No, I haven't. And I have all this double knit taking up a lot of room in my stash. I realised when I was freezing everything post-moth, that I had all of this. And so I looked up on Ravelry patterns, and I've always wanted to make an Andi Sutherland, it might be Satterland pattern, just because those designs have that sort of vintage flair but modern construction and sort of a bit more everyday wearable vintage. So I've been meaning to make one for ages, and then I thought, actually this yarn could probably work for that because they're all heavier weight, you know, mostly double knit and heavier. So yeah, I put in a search, calculated my yardage, put in a search on Ravelry, and this is the one I've ended up choosing based on whether I like it or not and the yarn requirements. So I'm excited to give this a go. The dyeing might go horribly wrong and we might not get past that stage, but we shall see. Like I say, I'll make a video about it so you can come along for the ride. So you might have noticed, as I have just realised, that having left these future projects out of the boxes, every single one of these boxes is absolutely rammed full, so I don't have room to store any of this yarn. So I'm gonna have to find a solution for that. And what I'm also gonna do now is, similar to what I did with this, I'm gonna go through my stash on Ravelry and start seeing what sort of patterns I can match up to bits of yarn, basically. We'll see, we'll see how many balls of wool I can get rid of. You're not gonna believe it, but I've just found 10 extra balls of double knit weight yarn. So that brings the total to 164. So as I came to review this footage the other day, I realised that I filmed the entire end of this video without my microphone switched on. So here we are, a few days later, and I'm going to try and remember what I said. Anyway, so I found a few more patterns that I think would work with some of the yarns I have in my stash. So I'm just going to talk you through those. Some of them are patterns I found on Ravelry, but some of them are vintage patterns that I have in my stash. So let's start with the Ravelry ones because they're not as exciting. So I have this ball of mohair, which I think I got in a charity shop, and I'm not entirely sure how much that is in terms of yardage. But given rough estimates for mohair, I looked at some other brands of mohair. I think I'm going to have enough to make this pattern. So it's called Ghost Whisperer by Park Williams, and to make the size I think I'm going to need, it says I'm going to need 440 yards, which is probably about 400 meters. So yeah, I have 130 grams of this. So I'm hoping that's going to be more than 400 meters. Normally 4-ply is about 400 meters to 100 grams. So this is much finer than 4-ply. So it should work. I don't know. It's going to be an experiment. Let's see. And then the other one, I have this. This is the Vianne Knitters Finita maybe, which I made this thread sweater that I wasn't really very happy with, and it bobbled to no end, and it turned out the wrong size. And I didn't think I had any of this left because I was going to make it bigger. And then I found it when I was doing out my stash. So I'm going to use up, there's almost a full ball of it, and I found a pattern for some gloves on Ravelry because I think this is so soft that that would actually make a lovely pair of gloves, really soft on the hands. And I could alter that sweater I made, but I don't want to because I'm not really pleased with that sweater. So I'm going to turn this into something else that I'm actually going to wear and use. Speaking of gloves, I have this one, which is a 3-ply, a beautiful, what is it? Cashmere silk. And this is what I used to make my very first Rizzo sweater? Blouse? Rizzo blouse, I think it's called, the pattern, from Poison Girls. And I have this much left, and it's a true 3-ply. So what I thought I would do with that is make one of my original vintage patterns. Again, it's such a beautiful soft yarn that I really would like to make gloves with it. So I have this pattern for gloves, which one is 1 ounce and one is 2 ounce. I probably have just shy of 2 ounces, so we might have to make the first one, the cable gloves. But I'm quite excited about that. It's been a while since I've knit any gloves. They're fiddly, of course, the fingers, and I'm interested how these are knit because sometimes they're knit in the round and sometimes they're knit flat and you seam up the fingers. So we'll see what happens there. And then finally, I have all the odds and ends from my rainbow jumper, which unfortunately was one of the casualties of the washing machine. So I'll probably be making another one of those at some point. But these are all the Camo Rose organic summer wool. And I was, you know, there's sort of not quite enough to do anything with in terms of garments. And then I found this pattern, which I've been wanting to try out for the longest of time because it's for sort of make, do and mend socks. And you can see there's 2 options for socks, plain ones and then ones made from oddments. And so I'm going to make the colour work ones. And again, interestingly, I've checked the instructions already. They are knit flat, and I've never knit a sock flat before. I mean, I'm aware with how it works, but I just like to give it a go. So I can hopefully use up all these leftovers in a proper make, do and mend style, as well as experiment with some new techniques, because that's what I'm kind of hoping to get out of this as well, is not just to use up my stash, but it will also force me into being creative and trying new things. These are all the ones that I've identified so far. I favorited a few more patterns on Ravelry that I think maybe might work, and I've been through my hard copy books and things like that, and I've identified a few things I'd like to try. But honestly, I think this is probably enough to be getting on with. I'm also very aware of the fact that I very rarely stick to these things, and I add things to my Ravelry queue and then never make them. So I don't want to sort of be too prescriptive with myself. I still want to allow some creativity and some freedom. But I think what I've got is a good mix of things so that, you know, if I'm in the mood for knitting socks, I can knit socks. And if I'm in the mood for making gloves, I can make those. And I've never worked with mohair before, so that's going to be interesting, you know, and so that's keeping me engaged and inspired and interested in this project. So I hope this video was entertaining. It was definitely useful for me because it's really made me confront just how much wool I have. And maybe for you, a stash this size is no problem, but for me it really is too much for mostly practical reasons. I don't have the space. And I'm actually really excited. I've discovered a lot of things in my stash that I'd forgotten I had, like this Finita. So I'm really excited to make a start. I've got a lot of knitting ahead of me. I mean, what a shame. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of keep a log of the projects I make as I go along, and I'll update you every now and again once I've got a video's worth of completed projects. And hopefully we'll be able to see the numbers tick down. Yeah, the final total, it turns out, for balls of wool, that's 50-gram balls of wool in my stash, was 164. It's not exactly 164 physical balls, it's more like equivalents. So if I have like a 100-gram skein of yarn, I'm counting that as 2, and if I've got lots of little bits, I sort of added them up until they were roughly a 50-gram ball. So it's kind of an average, but what I'm hoping to do as I work my way through the stash is sort of tick off and update the total as and when I make things up. So we shall see how long it takes me, because I'm really, really hoping I can get down to 0. Maybe that's not realistic. Let's say 10. Let's hope I can get to single figures. So if you have any suggestions for patterns that you think I might like to help me get through my stash, you know, make do and mend style ones, 1940s ones, but also modern ones. Like I say, part of this process is I want to try new things. So if you see something really interesting that you think I might like, feel free to let me know. You can comment on this video, or you can message me on Instagram, and I'm on Ravelry as well. I'll leave a link in the description. So add me as a friend on Ravelry, and you can take a look in real time as I work on these projects and I hopefully get my stash down. I've got a lot of knitting to do, so I better make a start. So all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching. See you next time.